All right. My guest today is a true visionary leading the charge and revolutionizing private markets. As the CEO of and founder of Sonata One, team leads the company's vision in becoming the international exchange for private funds. He's a veteran in simplifying complex investing processes, and he's dedicated to opening the private markets for everyone. It's an honor to have him with us. Welcome, Tim. How are you doing today?
Welcome. Good to meet you. And thank you for having me on the podcast.
That's great. Yeah, it's glad to finally have you here. I always ask guests these questions, and it's a little trivia for you this afternoon. I guess UK time there. What is something about you that folks don't know? Some fun fact about yourself.
In fact, about me, I spend a lot of time in the mountains, particularly in Chamonix, and find a lot of enjoyment in nature. And both summer and winter, I actually like being in that environment even more in the summer than I do in winter, when you can be running up high and seeing the rock all around you. It's a very beautiful environment, and I enjoy being there.
That's amazing. What's your favorite spot?
So Chamonix is a long valley. You've got a running path on the bottom and also on the top of 2,000 meters up on both sides, and the higher path on the southern side is really lovely.
Awesome. Thanks again for taking the time to join us on the show today. So Tim, we're particularly interested in your journey. You're a very accomplished entrepreneur in this space. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that journey has been like for you, from your genesis to the founding of Sonata One?
That's a very broad question. So Sonata One started because it was very obvious for me that when we were asking investors to comply with US tax legislation, FATCA, we would ask them once because the investor existed once, and then to use that information to connect that information multiple times to each of the different portfolio investments. It was not something that I ever thought about. It just seemed completely obvious. And so when people talk about a kind of eureka moment as to the core concepts that lies behind your business, I don't think I really had one. It just always seemed to be obvious that that's the way that you would do it. And one thing, as with many great businesses, one thing led to another. If you look at Microsoft, where they are now is very different than where they started. So for S1, we began very much focused on tax. We then realized that the same information about investors and private funds, the name, address, tax ID, could also be reused to support KYC, know your client. And then that same information could then also be used for securities law. Who are you and do you know what you're doing? So using the same information 3 times meant it was a very kind of joined up process across securities law, KYC, and tax. And now we've kind of realized that by virtue of having done that for 10 years, we've now created a network of connecting investors across all the funds in which they're invested. And so the question now, the challenge now to be solved is, if we have acknowledged expertise in providing this investor passport, this one and done approval for investors, how can we use that fully? How can we fully exploit that? And so the problem that fund managers are trying to solve today is how to bring more investors into bigger funds and support them over the life cycle. And so we are now using that keystone that we have, that passport in the middle, to create the whole of that flow in a single seamless joined up process, bringing investors from fund selection through subscription into settlement of cash, and then into seeing their portfolio all in one place. And I think by doing that, we've got an opportunity to change the paradigm of how private markets work and bring some of the infrastructure that people see in public markets, exchanges and brokerages, applications like Robinhood, for example, that make investing in public markets available to both institutions and individuals. We've got the opportunity now to do that for private funds as well. And that's wildly, wildly exciting, and is very different from where we started. Originally in 2015 inside somebody else's business. and then spinning out with 15 people and more cost than we did revenue in 2020, September 2020.
Yeah. So can I double click into that a little bit? How small was the team when you started?
Yeah, so we spun out of. We should remember that when I first had this idea, I was just an accountant working for somebody else in somebody else's business, and uh, there was a phase, first of all, where I had to persuade that business that we could set up this separate business unit within their overall umbrella, and then to prove the concept, to get some initial technology in there, to bring the initial clients on board, build the team, do the go-to-market, and then having done that, then persuade that business to let us go. And that took 5 years, from October 2015, when we first incorporated the first to September 24th of September 2020, when we spun out of the parent group. And when we spun out, we were 15 people in Guernsey in the Channel Islands, and we had £892,000 of revenue, £1.5 million of committed cost, and just enough money in the bank account to survive for about a year. And it was really from these beginnings that I approved every single payment that went out of the business. I was finance director, marketing director, technology director,
Multiple hats.
operations director, HR director, pretty much everything. And really from that point on, we are now today 150 people around the world, and growing at a very fast rate, and very grateful for the fact that I now have a team of experts in all of these roles that I've mentioned, who do all of them way better than I ever did in the beginning.
Yeah. What kept you going? Because were there any times at all where you kind of felt like, giving up? Did you have any of those moments where it was like, I don't know if we could do this? I'm curious to get, what were those feelings in those early days?
Well, it's very easy now when you're running a business that demands a different set of skills from me and you're that there's a degree of value in the business, to forget about these early days. And it's really important to remember that that's where we've come from. Certainly in the very beginning, I'm quite often asked what makes someone become an entrepreneur. In the beginning, there was no choice for me in the end, but to spin Sonata One out of its parent group. Not to do so when I knew that there was an opportunity there, and would have felt like a living death. I was just the other side of 40. I had enough experience to understand the market and the problem that we were trying to solve, and had a practice run in creating one or two different service lines inside other people's businesses. I felt I could do it, and I felt that there was a real opportunity there. And to not do that, I just couldn't have lived with myself. So it was an imperative and a real drive. And it's just as well that you've got that drive, because when you actually spin out, all of the enthusiasm and the evangelization that you've been doing to get to that point actually becomes very real. And that's actually when the real hard work begins. And I learned very quickly that everyone took their cue from me. I learned that this was fundamentally my business. My house was on the line. We had remortgaged our house. And yes, I was being paid a salary, but I'd invested money in this business that I couldn't afford to lose. And that's stomach churning fear that then drives you. I used to run home in the small hours of the morning, and I look at my house and just think, oh my God, Tim, what have you done? And so it's that fear. You also, as you get started, you realize that I often say I felt like the roadrunner in the cartoon.
Right.
And the coyote roadrunner sits on the front of is on the front of the train, and the train is going down the track, and the roadrunner is kind of hanging on at the on the front of the train. And I very much felt that in the early days, because at the end of the day, everyone who's around you will give up their very best and take you so far on the journey. But the only person who will make sure that you're heading in a consistent direction and also fill any and all gaps that are necessary in order for the business to succeed is the founder. And that was the early days. And I think the most meaningful day was the day when we broke even, the day when our revenue matched our expenses. And I remember shouting down the phone to one of my investors, we're going to get our money back. We're going to get our money back. And at that point, that was really all that I wanted, to validate what could be done and to make sure that I didn't lose anything. And from there, we've continued to build, and rightly or wrongly, we've continued to fund our expenses ourselves. We've never spent more than we earned, and that has pros and cons, but it certainly now leaves us in a very strong position from which to grow in the future.
Yeah, sometimes you hear only the success stories, right? Like you hear about the ending, but you never, people don't really know all it takes, right? Like it's quite a bit. So Sonata One, for an investor and for a fund manager, what are some of the suites of offerings that you provide today? Simple, something that someone who's not familiar with the private markets can understand.
So anyone who has traveled through a US airport knows that you've got the difficult queue, where you get strip searched and all your bags taken out and whatever. And then you've got the easy queue called TSA PreCheck, where you are pre-approved and pre-checked, and then you don't have to take your laptop out of your bag, and can keep your shoes on and just walk through the scanner. It's a lot easier. That's essentially what we do for investors and private funds. We approve them once for three things. So our passport covers three things. Securities law, which essentially is just making sure that the investor knows what they're doing and has enough money to do it. KYC, to ensure that the financial system is not funding terrorism or crime, and then tax, to ensure that every investor declares their income and assets to their domestic tax authority. These are the three sets of questions that today or historically investors were asked again and again and again and again every time they invested into a new fund. And they had to go through a process of answering questions, providing documents, having these documents certified and approved, and providing all of this information over email, by snail mail, and to different standards in different countries. And what Sonata One does is provide a single passport that is compliant across all jurisdictions and asks these three sets of questions together in one place and done once across all of their portfolio. And so the other way of thinking about it is that every time that anyone has to open a bank account, you have to fill out a long and painful bank account opening form. That's essentially what investors have had to have done every time they've made a new investment in private funds. And we just allow you to do that once and connect it across all of your portfolio.
Amazing. Awesome. And Tim, you're a veteran in this space. What trends are you seeing today? What shifts are you seeing in the private markets? Yeah. And maybe if you also could maybe touch on the role technology plays in any of these shifts that you're seeing in the private markets today.
I think you could pretty much cover a whole podcast series on both of these questions. So I think to provide a brief comment, private funds continue to outperform public equities over the long term. And they do that by two structural factors. The first is asymmetry of information, and the second is asymmetry of control. In public markets, if you invest in any publicly quoted company, your ability to control of what that company does is almost zero, and your ability to understand that company's strategy through the information that you're provided is very limited, both in terms of the information that's available, but also the time and effort and capability that's required in order to understand. And so therefore, in public markets, fundamentally, the providers of capital, the investors, people like me and you, are not, their interests are not aligned with those of the management team running each of these companies. And so therefore, surprise, surprise, companies often get into trouble and investors are not necessarily always achieving the returns on their investment that they're looking for. Now, private funds solve that problem by taking direct ownership in the companies that in which they're invested, and the fund manager actually sitting on the board, having access to all of the information and in a position to make changes. So private markets continue to perform very strongly. And what's changing these days is that private funds historically have been very focused on institutional capital from sovereign wealth funds, university endowments, insurance companies, pension plans that can write very big checks, a small number of very big checks. And what is one of the things that's changing in private funds is the launch of are very much targeted at high net worth individuals. It's maybe not down to the man on the street like me and you, but people with several million to invest are now increasingly being targeted by private wealth managers, private fund managers, but also by the wealth management houses that wealth advisors are in the US, the wirehouses, the independent broker dealers, and the RIAs. And opening up private funds to retail capital, ordinary people, vastly increases the spectrum of investors that are available to come into the asset class, further powering the growth of private funds. The challenge of doing that is that if you're bringing more investors into bigger funds, you need a more scalable process, not only to bring them into the fund, but also to support them over the fund's life cycle. And that infrastructure has not existed in private funds up until now. And that's fundamentally the gap and the challenge that Sonata One is stepping into, with a single seamless process connecting investors all the way through from selecting the funds into which they want to invest, subscribing once using that one and done passport that we've talked about, settling their money in and out of the fund, money in, money out, and then seeing their portfolio all together in one place. And that's the kind of infrastructure that private markets need, whether from us or from other people, in order to really fully grasp the opportunity of bringing retail capital into the asset class.
Interesting. That makes sense, and it's, I like how you put it too. Like, kind of brought out what Sonata One's role plays in that shift, which is interesting to see. Just switching gears a little bit, Tim. So you've grown Sonata One to where it is today. What does a typical day look like for you as now as CEO?
So what's a typical day look like for me? So in the beginning, we were so small that everyone had to do a little bit of everything. And this is the way that all companies, I think, go. I had to do 10 different jobs, all combined into one. And it's quite interesting these days. All of our new joiners at Sonata One get an opportunity to meet the CEO. And I tell them these days that I've done every job. Whatever your job is, I've done it badly. And you are now doing it much better. But I do actually know what your job entails, and because I've done it. And these what happens, or what's happened for us, is that as we've grown up, we've been able to bring in a management team who now essentially have got to the stage of running the business on a day-to-day basis, and who collaborate with each other and support each other to deliver the service. We have a two-tier management structure within S leadership structure, and chief officers in the first layer, and then directors and managing directors in the second. So between that team now essentially runs the business on a day-to-day basis. And my role has very much shifted to externally facing, representing Sonata One as the face of the organization across the industry, focusing very much with our existing clients I meet all of our existing clients several times a year, supporting the new sales process with new opportunities as it comes through, managing our stakeholders. As a company grows up, you have an increasing number of both shareholders, but also wider stakeholders around the business. It's important that they have face time with me. And also thinking about where the business is going, developing our strategy, and then making sure that internally I am conducting the orchestra to do that. My contribution inside is very much focused on the kind of company that we need to be, trying to inspire with a vision, but also talking about our values, the kind of organization and that we want to be, how we want to be working with each other, the values that underpin the decisions that are made on a day-to-day basis. And that very much comes and starts from me. And I think that's one of the advantages of a founder-led business, that often in corporate life, values are things that are written up on the wall because a PR agency has said that it's a good idea, or a committee has sat round and decided that it would be good to have these values. In Sonata One, these are actually a description of the kind of company that I want to be part of, that I want to lead. And therefore they matter. They matter to me, and therefore people who come and join this rocket ship, they should matter to them as well. That's the basis of the kind of company. So our values are challenge, change, connect, and commit. We challenge ourselves to be the best version of ourselves. We don't accept the world as it is. We challenge. We're an eyes up organization full of possibility and focused on the future. We challenge. That then requires action, and that's change. We need to be open to change, and we as humans are very poor at doing change. And if we're going to change, we need to be connected as one team, connect all together. I've made many mistakes in building Sonata One, but one of the things we've got right is that we are very much one team. And we work together as one connected team around the world, all of us dependent on each other. And that also then requires commitment to each other, to being the best version of ourselves, and to the vision that we're actually trying to create together of becoming the international exchange of private funds. Values, therefore, to Sonata One are absolutely core to who and what we are and what we do.
And would you say that's kind of like you're thinking more long term, because like getting results short term versus long term, like values? Would you agree that values probably take you farther as a business, just in terms of where your grand vision and keeping the team together? I mean, you touched on a few values there, but how are you thinking about it? Why is it so important? Why is that so important as a business? And this is something founders sometimes can put on the side, and then later on they start saying, "Oh, this has become very important." Why would you say this is important when growing a business?
So I think one of the things I learned most early on was that everyone took their cue from me, and therefore I had to think quite a lot about what version of me I wanted to inculcate throughout Sonata One. You're right. There's both a short and a longer term dimension to that. In the day to day, it's important in a day to day that the way we treat each other, the way we interact with each other, norms and behavioral expectations that we have are guided by our values. And I've had to make a number of decisions over the years where I've had to decide, do our values actually mean something? If I make this decision, this is going to cost the business. There's actually, in a lot of cases, going to be a financial cost for taking this particular course of action. But does this course of action actually align with the values and the kind of organization that we want to be? And when push has come to shove, I have always, at the very least, tried to operate in accordance with the kind of organization that I want to lead, and to be honest, the kind of human that I want to be. And so there's definitely an immediate day-to-day, everyday execution element. At the same time, you also need to know where you're going. You need to know why your organization exists. If you're just hanging around selling services, doing your best, supporting your clients, and you don't think of why you exist and where you're going, and how your values feed into that, to continue to renew and rejuvenate and extend that vision, then you will just become lost. And Sonata One has our values feed into the kind of organization that we are, and therefore how far we can challenge to change the paradigm of private fund investing. The change that we actually need to effect, going through our technology roadmap and a service delivery agenda, the kind of new services we're starting to roll out as we execute our vision. The fact that we are today operating in 8 different countries around the world and 24 hours a day. And we do so as both a technology firm, full fat tech firm, and also a regulated financial services provider. So bringing these two very different worlds together in one business and one connected team, and fundamentally all of us together connected and committed to our vision and where we're going. And it's absolutely fundamental over the long term that the whole organization has that consistent sense of values, and that comes from, in this case, me.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that, and it's true. Like it does trickle from the top down, right? Like in terms of like culture and the energy that you bring as a, you talked about founder-led companies, right? So yeah, just switching gears a little bit. So you touched on different areas where you spend your time on. Now, if you had one wish and there was one thing you could do to kind of improve in Sonata One today, what would that be?
Well, I think as the founder, you're probably most proud of what you've created and also most aware of all of its weaknesses. And I would like to go faster. We have a huge opportunity to change the way that investors invest into this asset class. That requires us to build new technology, to roll out new services, to win new clients, and we need to do that faster. We've got exactly the right vision, and we need to execute it faster. And so I am now very focused on a day-to-day basis of enabling the business to do exactly that with the right partners across the ecosystem in which we operate. Very proud of the progress that we've made to date, and everybody who contributes on a day-to-day basis in doing that. Now we need to go faster, and that's where my focus is today.
Yeah, that makes sense. Speed is like the most. It's you're in your intersection of finance and tech, right? Like speed is like the bread and butter, right? Like everything is changing so quickly. But what does that mean to you specifically? Yes, you have a lot of visions and ideas. Is there any particular challenge that you are actually you're racing to get to or to resolve? Like what is where does speed play the most today?
Well, I think any business wants to go faster once it hits a certain point. We have a very ambitious technology agenda. We're completely rewriting all of the code with which we spun out. There will be none of the dodgy code that I originally wrote left in the system by the end of 2026. We are extending the range of services that we have. That requires us to be regulated in ever greater number of countries. We're building out our sales team, and particularly in the US. We are a British company, but a lot of our clients are from North America, and our commercial team is predominantly based in Manhattan. And we need to attract and scale out a much greater number of commercial people to get our message out there and to move. And then our day-to-day operations. We're now at a stage where we can continue to invest in really improving the level of service that we give to all of our existing clients even further than where we are today. And we've got a number of initiatives under our new Chief Operating Officer. Again, another person that we've just brought to do their bit faster and better than I ever did it. And we need to do all of these things faster. We've got a real opportunity to change the paradigm of this asset class. And it's the right vision. We just need to execute it faster. And so therefore, my focus today is on working with a range of people who can help us to do that.
So that's That's great to hear. What's your vision in the next 12 months for Sonata One?
Our vision is to become the international exchange of private funds. So over the next 12 months, we're going to be rolling out a range of services that begin to complete that value proposition. So we will first of all enable investors to select the funds into which they are going to invest. That replaces dodgy deal room that many is often used today. We then will link that into our one and done passport that we've been doing for many years. We're very much focused on enabling investors to settle money into funds and receive money out of funds, and that's through our new transfer agency service that's launching at the end of Q1 2026, and then enabling investors to see their portfolio all in one place. Today, if you're an investor in private funds, you've got to download different capital account statements from every different fund in which you're invested and somehow or other try and stitch them together. And that's not sustainable or efficient as the asset class extends into retail capital. Nobody does that in their day-to-day lives. Why should we be doing that in the financial sector? And so we are going to be rolling out on a new investor portal early in 2026, enabling investors to see all of their portfolio all in the one place. And then as we extend beyond that, we then have an even more ambitious plan as we get towards the end of 2027, really opening up private funds and making it very, very retail ready. Lots to come, huge investment going in behind this business at the moment, and very grateful for all the clients and also industry partners who've supported us on our journey to this point.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. And if there's one takeaway for early stage founders who are listening to you today, what is that? There's one piece of advice you can give to your 30-something-year-old self or 20-something-year-old self. What would that be? And this probably applicable more so for early stage founders today.
I'd give a few things. Firstly, know your market. Don't do something that you don't know. Focus on experience that you've had, a problem that you've experienced, and a market that you understand. You've got to know who you're selling to and why they're going to buy. 2, technology is often the answer, but certainly in financial services, it's got to be combined with a service element in order to succeed. 1 + 1 actually equals 3, and that's something that we've found. Never give up. Never give up. It's way harder. Building Sonata One has been the crucible through which I as a human have been tested, and it exposes all of your flaws and all of your weaknesses, but never give up. And be prepared to change as the company grows. If you as a founder are going to be an effective enabler for its story, you need to be prepared to change and evolve into new versions of yourself as the company changes. The Sonata One today needs very different things from what it needed from me at the beginning. And in order to continue to be an effective and supportive part of that journey, you as a founder need to continue to evolve. And that's often a lot harder than what it seems. But most importantly, above all of that stuff, never give up.
Yeah, amazing. Some wise advice, wise gems there. Thank you, Tim, for taking the time. This was wonderful, very insightful, and thank you for sharing your story. And looking forward to see all that you accomplish in the coming months. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.